3, 2, 1. Hey, what's up, everybody? Pete Caliendo, Baseball Outside the Box, the show that loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds that love the challenge of status quo. And we have got 3 of the top college baseball coaches in the country. And so excited, I was just telling them offline, I said, it's the only time I get a chance to see them is on the Zoom. So hopefully we'll be back soon. But first of all, leading off, the shortstop, Rick Heller, the Iowa Hawkeyes head baseball coach, batting second. And I picked him second just because he looks like a second hitter, and I'm sure he can do everything. John Vodenlich from the University of Wisconsin-Whitewater, and hitting third, the man, Lunch McKenzie. He is at Concordia University, St. Paul, the head baseball coach for 20 years, but now he's the assistant coach, and we're going to ask him about that. Hey, we got 3 guys on that got so much tremendous information for you, but think about it, 3 different levels of college baseball, and all of them are outstanding. So let me first welcome the leadoff hitter, Rick Heller. What's up, buddy?
Hey, Pete. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, are you kidding? 1, it's been a long time. 2, I used to know you when you and I were nobody, and I'm still nobody, and you're big time. So always good to know you. It's good to have you on the show. Then second, John Vodenlich. What's up, Johnny? Oh, hang on, John. Let me unmute you. Hang on. You're still muted. Hang on. There you go. Go.
How you doing, Pete? Good to see you.
All right. And number 3, the man they call Lunch. Everybody knows him by Lunch McKenzie. What's up, buddy?
I'm glad to see that John had a little trouble with this techie stuff, because at my age, I don't know how to turn anything on or anything off. So thanks for picking me up, Coach V.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. Well, listen, we're going to get started. Let's just go right away. Let me start with Rick. Rick, just tell us what's been going on with you at the university, and as far as, with college baseball, obviously it's been down. Recruiting-wise, there's certain periods, and it's all kind of wacky right now. But give us a little heads up there.
Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least, but been busy. A lot of calls, a lot of Zoom calls, a lot of meetings, committees. When we had the shutdown in March, the Big Ten coaches have been meeting at least once a week since that time, and we've tried to use this time to take advantage and put out a new proposal. A lot of you guys might have read about it, to move the season back 4 weeks so that we can play through the month of June and start baseball about the same time MLB does, and just all the value to that, not just a north-south thing or a warm-cold thing, but just good of the game with the budgets being tight everywhere and with nobody knowing what's going to happen if we don't play football. We felt like it was best to be proactive and get something out there that would give all of us across the country a chance to at least maybe make money, but even just take a positive step in eliminating so many costs that go with our sport, with our 4 or 5 weeks we have to travel, and then the Southern teams being able to make money. So a lot of stuff with that we've been working on with our own players. One thing we do with our team that I think is good, and some of you guys might want to do it if you don't, we break our team down 5, 6, 7 guys, however many the numbers add up to, and each one of the assistants takes a group, and we talk to guys individually all season long, all year long, with individual meetings. It's one way to get guys face to face. We continued that with calls throughout the COVID, still doing it. We also did team meetings every week or every 2 weeks until the season was over, until the school year was over and finals. And then we haven't been doing as much with the team stuff as we've gotten into summer, and the guys are getting ready to play summer ball. And that was just the primary goal right away, was to get guys a place to work out, because they couldn't work out at our facilities. The facilities were shut down here. And in fact, I'm still not in my office yet as we speak, sneak in once a week usually to try to take care of some things I can at home. But we're still working from home, at least in the baseball department, and just mainly trying to get our guys organized. Once that was done, things kind of rolled smooth. Pleased that our guys did awesome academically with all the hoops they had to jump through with the online, the virtual classes. And then, just mainly a lot of meetings with the department with what's going on here and come back to play and lots of stuff like that. So that's a long-winded answer, but that's what I've been doing.
Absolutely. And I think you guys probably got a better chance, unfortunately, or fortunately for you, than Major League Baseball does. But right now it doesn't look good either, for them getting started. Lunch, how about you? What you been doing?
It's been pretty similar to what Coach H is talking about. We met with our kids on virtual meetings and practices and such until the season was over. I've been doing everything we can. We're in a quiet period, so we can't go out and evaluate. And so it's interesting. We actually watched the PBR showcase that was 2 miles from my house the last couple of days. I had to watch it on my phone or on Facebook, but at least we got to observe it. So it's interesting that you got a D1, D2, and D3 guy on here because I think our recruiting, it's all different. I think, Coach Heller, aren't you guys in a dead period?
We're shut down. We can't go on the road until August if that sticks. And then, Iowa started playing high school baseball this week. Yeah. So I've got games going on less than a mile from my house and I can't go watch them. So it feels kind of weird. I actually was at the ballpark. My daughter's team started playing. She's 10 softball. And that was the first ballpark I've been to since March.
A question on that. I hate to, I'm not trying to circumvent anything here as far as anything illegal. Can't you send somebody to the game with a video camera live on Facebook or something, or to watch the game?
No, not really. Not unless they're filming the game.
Right.
And a lot of people are doing that. So, to your point, Pete. I mean, we are watching a lot of video, and that's really about all we can do.
Cool. Coach Vodenlich, how about you, man? What's going on?
Well, let me start with saying it's the only time I've heard the word quiet and lunch McKenzie in the same sentence. All right. So we're not quiet, period. We can do whatever we want. We do have communication with a lot of recruits right now, and some of them are starting to trickle down. Maybe they got a year back and they're not going to spend it at the school they're at. So yeah, we're doing a lot of that. But I think the key for our players is, and for me, is just the ability to adjust. The old saying, life's 10% of what happens to you, 90% how you react to it. And I feel we've been doing that in every division for about the last 6 months. So we're adjusting. I have 29 more things to do at home. So I got some things at home going on. But yeah, it looks like we're going to be back on campus in the fall. We're excited about that. And we're excited, to welcome the players back.
Hey, John, what are you doing? Because I'm going to go in reverse here. What are you doing with your players? What are you recommending to them? I mean, are you recommending like what they should be? Are there certain workouts they should be doing to stay consistent, or is it just on their own?
A lot of that was sent out to them early in this process. I can tell you that I think all of us as coaches would acknowledge the fact that an intrinsically motivated or an internally motivated player is the one you want. And we're not dabbling with them every day, but we're hoping they'll find a place to play. We're hoping they'll continue to work out. They have 2 workouts. They have something they can do in the gym and something they can do at home. And I feel pretty good about our athletes taking care of business when it comes to that.
Lunch, Rick mentioned that, possibly June they're looking at. Right? I got that right, Rick? Possibly opening up in June, late June?
No, August 1.
I'm sorry, August 1. Lunch, anything with you guys?
It's the same, July 31st. We can't, we're shut. We're in that quiet period, even though Coach V doesn't believe that, but until July 31st. So, and, we're just doing the best we can. It's just, it's funny because the new head coach, Neil Lerner, played at St. Olaf. And so he's still very good friends with the head coach there. And of course, the D3 guys were up there scouting this tournament or this showcase, and he sent him a letter and said, "Hey, can you tell me who number 63 is? Because we can't see it too good on the screen." He said no. He said no. It's been pretty funny. I'm sure he probably told him, so we've had some fun with it. But you're just doing the best you can. It's just we got to practice what we preach. Control the controllables. Same thing we tell the players, and that's what we've got to do. It's just interesting times, but we'll get through it. We'll get through it. We have to get through it. So
Hey, and before we get started on the coaching aspect and the questions, I just want one more last thing with all three of you guys. You know, kind of, I know it's been tough for kids, obviously, to get recruited because a lot of you guys already have signed players. But talk about, you know, to coaches that are online. There's high school coaches. We also have some international coaches. Talk about the recruitment aspect at your program, how it works and how it's working now and what young people can do to kind of get noticed. Let me start with Rick.
Well, you know, right now it's word of mouth, talking to people and watching video. You know, our situation's probably a lot different than John and Lunch's, in the fact that we're trying to figure out our roster with, in our case, potentially 9 seniors coming back to play, with 3 of which would have been drafts in a normal size draft, and then a junior class where we thought we were going to lose 4 to the draft, possibly 5 or 6 if those guys had phenomenal years, and all those guys are going to be back, and then you have your incoming recruiting class. So I guess the positive to us not, you know, being allowed to be on the road is that we're really focusing on 22s at this point and 23s, so you don't at least feel like you're scrambling to fill your roster or scrambling for next year. You know, as far as our recruiting goes, you know, when I was a Division III coach at Upper Iowa, I mean, I had so many guys sight unseen. A lot of phone calls, guys I trust. If a certain guy said, take him, I took him. You know, after talking to the kid and determining it was going to be a good fit for a culture. But now, you know, it's really difficult. I'm hesitant to go after a kid just because of a video. I mean, that's difficult for us to do with the commitment that is there. Now, have we done it? Yes. But to take a kid sight unseen is very difficult. It really just whets our appetite, makes it easier to know if we should go see a kid, make the commitment to travel a long distance to see him play. And that's really what we're using the video for. And then just talking to a lot of the guys that we trust in the business to get names.
Hey, Vode, you mentioned, and I'm going to go to lunch in a second here, but you mentioned, well, you know, quiet time with Lunch, but you know, Lunch is an assistant coach now. Now that's a beauty. I can't wait to see how that one works out. But Lunch, talk about what you guys are doing as far as recruiting. What's the process? Any advice out there for high school coaches and even international guys?
Well, I think one thing that just as an individual I don't quite understand is we didn't get out and see these kids play in the spring, and now they're not letting us go out and see them play now.
Yeah.
You know, so it's you know, it's hurting the kids. We talked earlier, you know, before the broadcast came on, some of the junior college kids that didn't sign early are looking for places. And, you know, we had 7 seniors. We graduated 18 a year ago. So we brought in a big class, and now we had 7 seniors. Well, 5 are coming back. We signed 11 guys in the fall. So we've got like a 45-man roster, and there's good kids still contacting us. And there's just not room. So we don't get as far ahead as the D1 guys. I mean, we're still concentrating on the 21s. But, I mean, it's just the resources. I think Rick brought up a really good point. You know, there's a saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I had a guy teach me years ago. He said, no, it's who knows you. And what I mean by that is if Rick trusts a source and he can call that guy and say, you got a guy here? And he says, yeah, bam, because he knows that guy. He trusts him, and he'll give that kid a shot. And, you know, the USA connection has helped me with that, you know, to get to know guys across the country. And I can call. Now, a lot of guys don't want to come up to Minnesota because it's cold. But, I mean, if somebody gives me a character reference on a kid and I know him as a coach, you know, we're going to give that kid a serious look. But it's hard. It's hard for these kids. They don't know what to do either. And like I said, we were supposed to have a kid on campus today because they can come on campus and we can talk virtually. And he's sick, so he couldn't come on campus. So,
wow.
I mean, it's just, you know, I don't have a good answer for what they should do with this incoming class.
Right.
Until we can get out there and see them, or at least get to some showcases and then interact with these people and even the coaches more. You know, it's difficult.
You know, John, add to all that, and then I'm kind of naive college baseball because I'm doing more international. Am I wrong? Does the JUCOs have an advantage here? Are more kids going to start going, you know, with JUCO programs?
Well, JUCOs do have less rules for sure. I mean, and usually they're less expensive to go to school. But but I think, you know, their market is their market. I mean, there's a number of things that happen at four-year schools that don't happen at junior colleges. All right. I mean, Coach Heller's going to have homecoming. You know, it's
Yeah.
going to be surrounding a football game. Those are the reasons why they want to, you know, go to Iowa. So, yeah, I think from a rule standpoint, JCs have always had an advantage, but I don't know.
How about from a spot from a position of spots? You know, there's less spots possibly at your divisions right now.
Well, and every year they're going to graduate usually, you know, half their team, let's call it. So from that standpoint, for sure. And I think what you're seeing is you're seeing a trickle down effect a little bit where you know, Coach Heller's going to have some guys, and now they have some seniors coming back, and so there's a couple people at the bottom of their roster that may not be interested in sticking it out, and then they may look at other options. So there's some of that trickle down happening for sure. You know, but I think what's important to know about this whole COVID thing, it's not a 1 year bump. All right, we don't know what our sophomores are going to do. Right, our sophomores may a couple years from now choose to stay another year. So this is something that's here to stay. We're going to stick around and continue to work on it. But let me just summarize for all the coaches. The first two coaches did such a great job. I think if you want to know how to help your players best, develop a relationship with quality college coaches. And relationships are built over time, and they result in trust. And when I get a call from a coach I trust, I don't ask him what he runs and how he hits. I just say yes or no. Should I be getting this guy or not? And when he says yes, I take his word for that. And then finally, I think, you know, recruiting is great. It's always sales, but if you don't have a product to sell, you're not going to do very well. So don't forget, you have to build a program that is sellable. So relationships for sure. COVID's going to be with us for a long time. But I think if you want to help your players develop a relationship with a quality coach or multiple quality coaches and develop some relationships of trust, and I think that's the best way you can help your players.
Absolutely. Love it. Rick, let's talk about type of players. And, you know, and I know there's going to be, you know, some of you guys are going to have some of the similar answers in this, but, you know, when I ask coaches, I get different answers at times. Love to hear what type of players you're looking at, whether it be on field, off field, any kind of characteristics that you like in players.
Well, yes, for sure. You know, I'll preface this by saying that the player has to have a certain level of talent to begin with. But after that, in our program and what I've tried to do all the way back to the late 80s is try to pick kids that I thought were unselfish, were humble, would be a good teammate, could buy into, you know, what I believe is the right culture for a baseball program and my program. And we have passed many times on kids that were really good players because I didn't feel like they would be a good fit. And you don't want kids coming in and then transferring because it goes both ways. And then, you know, with that being said, it's not a perfect science. And the way recruiting works today for us, you know, I don't like it at all because we really don't get a chance to develop the relationships necessary to make some of those decisions with the early recruiting. A lot of times guys will be committing, you know, with them calling you, I won't even be able to call them, and we're forced and backed into a corner because of our system of the other guys out there trying to hoard players and take players off the charts. And we like to wait as long as we can, but we have to defend our state. We have to be able to get the best kids. And it's a little more risky now, not being able to build the kind of relationships and do the research necessary to find out if that player is going to be the type of fit that we want in our program. You know, from a talent standpoint, I think we're all pretty much looking for the same things, the best players that we can get. But it, you know, for me, it's always been about the attitude, the work ethic, you know, the humbleness, the unselfishness, because I've been at places where we were always the underdog, and I would tell the group that I've never had a team that overachieved, that wasn't a true team, a selfless team and a humble team. And, you know, we've had to overachieve to have success at a lot of the places that I've been. And I always felt that if I got to a place where, like Iowa, where the odds were even and we were fighting, you know, with both hands instead of one tied behind our back, that our system of building a culture like that on and off the field, classroom, weight room, nutrition, the whole 9 yards, that system would really work. And so far, so good.
Lunch, I would think it's the same for everybody. I mean, I know also you're looking for players to fill spots too, because you might lose certain guys, certain positions. I know it was like that in independent ball. But Lunch, if I was to, and you could add anything you like, but if I was to call you and say, Lunch, I got a player, what's the first question you're going to ask me?
Well, I don't know if I've got a standard first question, but I mean, I just want to hear about the kid, and I'd probably let you talk rather than me try to pry it out of you. But I mean, what Rick's saying is spot on. And I mean, I'm in a situation now. I'm the assistant, but still, when I got there in the fall of '99, we just went D2. We were an NAI Division II school, little tiny school, like 300 kids, and we were bad. And back then, I recruited the guy Rick's talking about not recruiting, because I went out and tried to get any living, breathing kid that could play baseball so he could help me win games.
Absolutely.
And it didn't work very well, because the 3-4 guys that I brought in that could really play, they caused me more pain off the field, partying, not going to school, just you know, there was a reason they were at my place, because they shouldn't have been at my place. A couple of them ended up playing some independent ball. Okay, but their character and their work ethic and these types of things, we were able to bring them in. I soon learned about 3 years into it, this isn't worth it. You're trying to do a quick fix, stop, start over, and just start bringing in good people as much as you can. And like John said, we didn't really have a great Division II product to sell. Our facilities were average. Okay, they told us, hey, you're going to be the only D2 school in the Twin City area. That's true. But we basically had 2 academic offerings. You came to be a teacher or a preacher, okay? And I don't know if you know, as far as alumni donations, not a lot of rich teachers.
Yes. Yeah.
So as far as building certain things, it was difficult. And now with all the academic offerings, the facility changes, and just the way that things are run over there, we've got a product we can sell. Now the fact that we're the only D2 in the Twin Cities holds water. You want to get into business and medicine, the internships are vast. So because our product has improved so vastly, it's a lot easier. And now we're really looking for that kid that wants to go to school, okay, that wants to get an education. One of the questions we ask our guys is this, is if you come to Concordia University to play baseball and get an education, you get hurt and you can never play baseball again, are you going to get the education that you need to be successful in your life? And if you say no to me, as much as I want you here, then you shouldn't come here, okay? And it's not a line. Because basically, I mean, from my end of it, I'm treating these guys as if they're my son, okay? And I take that very seriously in the fact that parent's sending their most prized possession to me, or one of them. And I'm going to influence them positively or negatively, probably a little of both. You know, we're not perfect over there. But we're looking for the good kids. And now we've got 36 kids on that roster this year, and we had a 3.5 GPA, team GPA, which is incredible. Mm-hmm. So, you know, that wasn't the case years ago. So now that just what John said, we built a product that can compete with some other products. And, yeah, we can market it and then let the kid make the good decision. But high character, are you going to go to school? We look for a kid that we think, this is going to sound crazy, we've had 21 guys sign professional contracts in the last 17 years, okay? So when they came here, they weren't good enough to play for the Gophers. And then when they left here, they were good enough to play for the Twins. Now, I don't get any of those guys signed. Coach Lerner doesn't get those guys signed, okay? We don't lift a weight for them. We don't take extra work. We don't go to school. We don't stay out of trouble off the field. It's up to that individual. Now, if we can bring a kid in that's already got those characters and we don't have to instill all those characters in it, it's a lot easier. It's a lot easier, and it makes us look good. And the beauty of, as far as recruiting, and I'll shut up here in a minute, is we get that kid, we get that quality of kid, and he comes in here and has a great experience. You know what he does, Pete? He goes and tells his buddy, okay? Because all this networking and all this relationship is good people meeting good people.
Absolutely.
Okay? if I'm a good person, in general, I hang around with good people. And Coach V is a good person. Well, he hangs around with good people. And all of a sudden we develop a relationship. Well, it's like a pyramid scheme. It goes like this because all these good people meeting good people. Okay. And this is when you can trust a person. I can call Phil Bodine down in Illinois and say, you got a kid? And I don't. Or he can call me and say, I got a kid, let's just take him. And we probably would, like Rick said. So it's, yeah, it's a complex deal, but in a nutshell, you know, we don't want to be psychologists all the time, you know, psychiatrists. I mean, you know, bring me some good kids that want to work hard and let me see if we can assist them in their development, because, you know, we're looking for a kid that I think those kids that signed, the ability was always in there. It was always in there. Now, they could have been the product of the fact they were the biggest guy in Babe Ruth baseball. And they were the best guy. They could do things physically wrong, fundamentally wrong, and get away with it because they were just the biggest dude on the planet. And then you got to get to know the kid. Okay, well, I think it's in this kid. Now, what kind of person is he? Is he going to come in and step back and kind of go back and start doing some basic things to develop consistency in this swing, because he's going to get exposed by the high velo and the good pitching now because it's better. So there's all sorts of, but in a nutshell, it's the person, it's the character, and you know, obviously they need to be able to play.
Well said. And folks, you know, if you got questions, write them on the chat and also on the comments for Twitter and Facebook. We'll take them off of there. John, go ahead. It's your turn.
Yeah, thanks, Pete. Let me try to summarize a little bit. I know we've been on this topic for a while. Coach Heller said something very important. The baseball tools are the prerequisite. Don't call us about some great guy who can't play, right? If he can't run and hit, and we can't talk. But let's assume he's within a range of anywhere from our average talent to, you know, satisfactory talent. He's in our range. As soon as he's in the range, the prerequisite is his talent. All of a sudden, we need to look at his character. All right, we have to look at his values. And, you know, look at it this way. I tell every player that comes in, more than likely, there's very few players that can walk in and be studs for any of our programs. There are few, but there's not a lot of them. So if they don't get any better when they get to our schools, they're never playing. You're not bringing a senior in and he's a stud. You better do something between 18 years old and 19 years old if he wants to get on the field at Iowa, at Concordia, at Whitewater. That has to happen. Are there exceptions? Of course there are exceptions. There's a guy who walks in and from his first day, he's our starter. We know that. We're really happy when we get those guys. So first and foremost, the prerequisite is the talent, and then we have to look at something else. How's he going to develop? And that comes down to his character and his values. All right. I do want to throw in, because I'm the D3 guy here, my pet peeve. If you're calling me, do not start with, I got a D3 guy for you. Okay? Because I don't win with D3 guys.
Yep.
Send them somewhere else. I don't want those guys. I want D1 guys in my program. That's who I want. And when you say that, that shows me you don't understand what's going on, because not every Division I program is built the same. There's Ferraris and there's Yugos. You got to tell me which one you're talking about, okay? So there's a huge difference between a great Division I school and a poor Division I school. And that's true at the D2 level and the D3 level. So when you call someone, if you really want to be an advocate, then you have to understand the talent that the program you're calling is playing at. How do they get to where they get to? And I'll be honest, we play with Division I talent. Now, could it be Division I talent at Iowa? No, maybe not. Is it at TCU and Vanderbilt? No. But there's a number of Division I players out there that aren't being very successful at Division I. To me, that's not a Division I athlete. So at the end of the day, you get the kid who can play, you make sure he has the right core values, you develop them, and hopefully good things will happen.
Guys, I want to get into, you know, what made you successful. But before we do that, because I think we're on a topic here. I know we've taken a little longer than we should have, but I think this is important because the coaches have some questions here. And I've heard this a lot as an outsider. I call myself an outsider, Rick. I'm going to start with you. nowadays it seems like, the college coaches are going more to showcases. They're dependent on travel programs. They're not really dependent on the high school coach as much. Again, I could be wrong, or everybody else can be wrong. Talk to the coaches about that. What's really going on out there when it comes to recruiting?
Well, as time has moved, a lot of the recruiting is done in the summer, and in most states, other than Iowa, the high school season is over. We're fortunate that our high school season plays in the summer, and so the relationships that we have with our high school coaches, I think, are outstanding, because myself as the head coach, I'm not missing games in the spring to go to Illinois or to go to Minnesota or go to Missouri to see the game and talk to the coach. I mean, that's my assistant if he has to. But in Iowa, I'm able to go to a game every night in a normal year, and I know pretty much every coach in our state, through the association. And so I would say ours is a little different than it is nationwide, because we still rely heavily on our high school coaches here in Iowa. But I know, through talking with Marty Sutherland, our recruiting coordinator, he's talking with a lot of the travel coaches, probably more than the high school coach. And I'm one that will always say to Marty, if we're getting ready to offer a kid, I know we're talking to his summer guys, but let's talk to his high school coach, just to get a feel for what he thinks from a character standpoint, from how he interacts at school. We've even gone as far as to call, if he doesn't play football, or if he does play football or whatever, call another coach in the department, so that we can make sure we get a feel for what the kid's about. But I would agree with that, Pete. I mean, that's kind of where the game has gone, and how it's going. But it's different in our case because of the summer baseball, and we rely heavily on the Iowa kids in our program.
Hey, Lunch, what about, I would think, is depending on time, my first call would be to the high school coach. I would think he knows them in school. He knows them in, on the field, off the field. And then, obviously I try to call, like Rick was saying, call as many people as possible, because you get to know more information. What do you think?
Well, being a former high school coach, it means a lot. Plus, he's going to know a lot of things about this young man that possibly a summer coach doesn't. And I coach summer ball too, so I'm not taking a side here one way or another. But Coach Lerner was the head coach at Hopkins High School up here, a pretty good program, for 8 years prior to coming and being my full-time assistant here a couple of years ago, and then obviously taking over for me. So we get a call on something. Who's he play for? Lakeville. Neil goes, I know that coach. So he calls the coach, and it's great because we get the honest evaluation, and Neil's big on relationships, so he's got good relationships with these guys, and he gets an honest answer. So, I mean, I don't know if there's a right or a wrong. I know when I became a high school coach, I resented the fact a little bit. Now we're talking back in the early 90s, that the Legion program seemed to be the glamorous program. And I said, no, when I played high school baseball, I want to play for my high school. I want to play for Minnetonka. And so I took a lot of pride in that. And we had to basically build that attitude in the kids, because I'm not ripping Jim Peck's Legion team. My boys played there. I coached with him for years on that Legion team. Okay. Yeah. But they got 19 uniforms. They travel all over the country, all over the world. They do these things. And whereas the high school, we're going to play 20 games. So we had to sell the fact that was important. But I used to get a lot of phone calls from guys when I was a high school coach. And so we reach out to our guys as much as we can. And I'm going to be honest with you, sometimes it's how well do we know this guy?
Mm-hmm. Who do you trust?
Yeah, is he a knucklehead? I mean, or is he person's going to oversell his kid? So I mean, it's just back to that relation piece too. It's just everybody doing the best we can. Because if you oversell a kid and you send him and it doesn't work out, boy, the next time you need some advice, are you going to listen to the guy? So it's just I don't know. I don't have a great answer for it, but I certainly trust the high school coaches.
Vode, same thing, but also Coach Freeman adds to that. He says, what about the 9th and 10th graders, that you're looking at, but these kids, they can change, physically during time. What do you think about that also?
As far as recruiting a 9th or 10th? grader?
Yeah, he says, what do you think coaches, what do the coaches think about recruiting a 9th or 10th grader athlete? These kids change so much in a couple of years, physically and mentally, positively or negatively.
Coach Freeman sent that?
Yeah, USA national team coach, gold medal, just like Lunch,
Yeah.
gold medal coach.
Yeah, you know better than that, Coach Freeman.
He's on Facebook, so he can't respond. You can say whatever you want.
Yeah, well, this is what I'd say. It is about relationships. The showcases are not going away, so they're part of what we do, and that's just fine. And select sports in the summer, that's not going to go away. And there's some advantages to the high school coach and some advantages to the summer coach. But it comes down to how Lunch mentioned trust. And that's what we want to do. As far as the 9th graders, you know, boy, he sounds almost like a parent. You got to grow up a little bit, and you really want to get recruited. Be the best player on your high school team. Be the best player on any team you play on. Let's start at that. So don't call me and say you play for Mount Prospect, Illinois, and you're their 9 hitter and you're on JV. Don't call me then. But when you're the 3 hitter and you're the stud on the team and there's about 4 of you guys, then I think you should call Coach Heller. But before that, at 9th grade, be the best player you can be on whatever team you're at. And I think that's a great starting point. And I think players should play at a high school, and then they should play in the summer. That's the key. High school brings a lot of things that the summer cannot. And of course, there's a lot of development that happens in the summer. So I'm sorry I didn't answer it directly, but we don't recruit 9th graders because if I'm right about the 9th grader, he signs a big time contract and I don't get him anyway. So yeah, so we wait until they've matured a little bit. We kind of get a feel for where they want to go, and then we'll contact them. So
yeah, I think I hear your phone ringing. It might be Coach Freeman. Answer that phone. I'll go to Rick. Hey, Rick, I want to go to question Tom O'Connell, and I only say the names of the coaches. If you don't want me to say your name on a question, just put it privately, as you do sometimes. But the question is this from Coach O'Connell. As it's being discussed, the NCAA allows another assistant. Would that enable a coach to go back to the old way of recruiting, actually watching a player in a game, not prescribed routine as a showcase?
I mean, it definitely would help. That's for sure. I know, one of the things when we were trying to get that passed that people brought up was that we were trying to have coaches on campus to coach our kids. And that's the frustrating part is missing out a practice or not having coaches at practice to actually work with your kids. And with only 2 assistants, I mean, you have to do what you have to do sometimes, but that extra assistant would allow us to have more coaches to actually coach our own kids and then still be able to free up more time to go out and watch games.
Guys, it's up to you if you want to answer that, Lunch or John. If not, we'll go on. I'll leave it to you. Let me know.
I'll just say one thing. I think that's one of the biggest issues right now in D1 sports. I mean, it's ridiculous that there's the limitation on coaching. Our staff is 7, not all fully paid, but 7 quality coaches. And it's hard to run a productive practice with 3 guys. It really is. And think about what they're trying to do at the D1 level. So hopefully that will pass Coach Heller soon. It needs to because I think it's the lowest ratio in all sport. I think that, so.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hopefully we're able to word it properly and we're able to get it passed the next time it can come up for vote. And, hopefully if the proposal I spoke briefly about earlier, moving the season back, playing in the summer, all those things, if we became a more profitable sport and had more income coming into the institution, I think that would lend itself to getting that assistant fast as well.
Don't forget, folks, ask questions if you have. If not, I'm going to go on. Lunch, you want to get into that or you want me to go to the next one?
Well, I'm just wondering isn't Coach Freeman a gymnastic coach? I mean, what's he on his call for?
I didn't see John answer his phone. I'm wondering. He's got it on mute, I think. All right, listen. Hey, listen, all three of you guys, obviously, everybody knows here and they can go to the websites, extremely successful at what you guys have done. You've all built great programs. Lunch, I'm going to start with you because, we talk about all the gold medals you had with USA Baseball, the program you built there at Concordia, the stuff you've done. You've talked all over the place at, national conventions. But you started off, if I remember right, correctly, you started off as a worker, right? A construction worker. And I want you to bring that up and how you built your program. What made you successful that can help other coaches is what I'm trying to get to.
Well, I don't want to ramble here too much. I didn't go to college. Okay. So I don't have a degree, although they gave me a doctorate last year, just so you know. I'd had to get that in there. You can call me Dr. Lunch, please. But so
all they had to do was print that.
I worked construction. Everybody in my family was a bricklayer and a block layer and a laborer. Nobody ever went to college. But I became a visiting clubhouse bat boy for the Twins in 1968. Just I'm telling you, pure luck. Went down, worked 3 days. Clubhouse guy liked me, hired me to work Viking games in the visiting clubhouse. All right. Now, if we have football, this will be my 53rd year in that visiting clubhouse for the Vikings.
Wow.
So being around that clubhouse, and so I worked for the Twins and did several things through batting practice, assistant trainer, all these things for about 5-6 years. But it was networking, it was watching, and I developed a lot of relationships there. And I was coaching 9-year-olds when I was 15. And so just one thing led to another. I wanted to coach, but I couldn't be a head high school coach in Minnesota because you had to have a teaching certificate. And I understand that. And finally, after about 18 years in a youth program, Minnetonka, which was my goal was to coach at my high school. Called and asked if I'd take the job, and I took the job and stayed there for 5 years. We had great success. Went to the state every year and stuff. Then my kids were coming. I had twin boys, and they were pretty good players. So I figured if I stayed there and they played early, it's going to be because of the old man. So I stepped back and really second guessed that one because that was my dream job. So along this time, I'm still working for the Twins. I've developed relationships. The visiting clubhouse thing for the Vikings. Tom Kelly wanted to come down for the game, so he's on the sidelines catching punts and pregame with us and stuff. So you just develop these relationships, and they would give me the time of day. If I asked TK things, he would give me the time of day because he knew I loved the game and wanted to learn baseball. I mean, when I got the Minnetonka job, I've been a Babe Ruth coach my whole life, and I called TK and I said, I don't know if I'm qualified to coach at this level. I was kind of nervous. And I said, just give me one piece of advice. He said, create an environment that makes you want to come to the ballpark, which in turn will create an environment that makes your players want to come to the ballpark and then go to work. So it was just a lot of different things like that. But doors kept opening. Pete, I quit at Minnetonka in June of '97. And a month later, USA called out of nowhere and said, we're starting a 16U program. You want to be an assistant coach? And so that year it was the first 16-year-old team they ever had. They didn't have the 12s and the 14s and the 15s. You had the national team, the Olympic team, and the college team. Mm-hmm. And they had you had a system for picking the 18-under team because all those kids were scouted and they fly them in there. That doesn't cost the kids any money. It's the top 124 guys. You narrow it down to 40. You go to the trials, you pick 20 and you go play. Well, how are you going to do that with 15-year-olds? And how are you going to, it didn't make sense. So we went to Taiwan and finished 5th in the World Championships. And the United States Olympic Committee was funding it at that time. It wasn't MLB, so there wasn't a lot of money. And they said, we're going to give you one more year, and if you can't at least win a medal in our game, then we're going to not fund this. We're just going to stay with the 18 and up teams. And so they gave me the team, and they gave me Bill Krejci, Iowa guy. I think he lives down closer to you now. Tim Saunders from Dublin, Ohio, for my assistants. And we picked a great team and got out of the way, and the kids went undefeated. And so we were the team of the year, USOC team of the year, and the coaches of the year and all this. And my life changed dramatically because I came home from that, and all of a sudden people wanted lessons. So I started with my buddy and I teaching lessons at a city facility. And a year later, I had 21 guys working for me underneath it. It blew up. And so that was going great. Life was great. I was out of construction. And Concordia goes D2 in the fall of '99. And they called me and I had to tell them I don't have a degree. And they said, well, 89% of the faculty and staff here have a degree. That's an issue. But boom, they hire me. And 17 years later, they make me the AD. So here's what I tell people, Pete, as far as from my story, you work hard, don't turn into a big shot, because you're going to get to do a lot of cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
When I got that bat boy job, the clubhouse guy pulled me inside and said, okay, listen, kid, you're going to be better looking at school tomorrow, okay, because you're a Twins bat boy, okay? You're going to be more popular with the guys. But if you turn into a big shot, you'll be out the door in 2 seconds, because Babe Ruth died and they kept playing baseball. And if you think Lunch McKenzie doesn't show up tomorrow, that they're going to shut this game down and you're crazy, they'll roll right past you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not telling you that there's times when you sit around and you go, yeah, you feel pretty good about yourself. But I had to learn, harness that, because you ain't special. You're blessed, fortunate, lucky, however you want to view that. I view it as blessed. I've had a whole bunch of doors open for me, Pete. And I tell people I'm not steering my ship. I'm just going along for the ride, trying not to screw this whole thing up. Because the doors that have been open for me, God's opened doors, and I've just gone through and tried to do the best I can. But the other thing I did to John Stocking, we have 6, 7 coaches too. The visiting teams hate it because they're introducing our coaches. We got more coaches than they got players. But I had guys who will come in and work for $2,000, you know, and so we're in 2 separate facilities in the winter. We've got our dome, and then we've got a pitching and hitting facility. Well, you can't do that with 2, 3 guys. You know, you got to have a couple pitching guys. You got to have a couple catching guys. So it's just been a process. It's trying to do the right thing. When I screw up, don't do it again, the best I can. And, you know, I've been so blessed. Tom Kelly and guys like this, I mean, have helped me out so much. And I'm just some schlep from Minnetonka that, you know, loves the game. And so I've been very fortunate in that. I've had a lot of help. And then a lot of doors were open, and I just tried to do the best I can. And
awesome. John, I hear a few things. Building relationships, I hear consistently being humble, passionate. You guys have all this, and you've stayed with it. You haven't given up. Add to that, please.
Yeah, you know, I think all successful people have that history of being no one and nowhere, right? I mean, we all started that way. I bet you. I'm curious to hear about Coach Heller, because, you know, my first baseball job came after a bunch of business jobs. And the one advice I would give to younger coaches is just remember, you got to do what you have to do before you get a chance to do what you love to do. You take a job that makes ends meet and you do what you have to do. My first baseball job, I was the compliance coordinator, the athletic trainer, the strength coach, the E-club coordinator. I drove the bus. I was the women's and men's golf coach. And when I interviewed, I said, but I don't have any clubs. I don't golf. He says, well, you better go get some. So the point is, every successful person has that part of their life. So how do they get from there to where they are now? And I think we have some people on this call that have gone that route. But for me, it started when Mark Fuller and Tom O'Connell selected me to the '87 All-Star game. No, I'm joking. But what I do want to say is this is what you do. Number one, you try to be the best at whatever your job is. That's it. Every day. If they tell you to dig a ditch, then be the best damn ditch digger you can be. All right? And eventually people respect you. And then eventually you get more responsibilities, and more responsibilities lead to a better job and better pay. All right. So don't ask me for more money. Ask me for more responsibility. And at the end of the day, I think most people in every walk of life go through that kind of process. And I'm happy, just like Lunch, to have been able to give something to the kids. And for me, I'm just happy I can coach baseball for a living.
Pete,
And a result of that,
can I throw something in there, Pete?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as a result of that, 2 national championships also. Did I get that right, John? 2?
Yeah.
I don't misrepresent it. You might have had 3. I didn't know. Go ahead, Lunch.
Just what John's saying there is a bingo, because I want to go back to my bat boy job. You know what the people saw? I was with the visiting teams. It was great. I was around all the visiting guys. I got to wear their uniform and be down on the field. I bat boyed the first 2 American League Championship Series they ever had. Okay, 69 and 70 for the Orioles. It was a glamorous job, and people saw that end of it. But you know what I did in between innings? When the Orioles or whoever I was playing for went out, I ran up, did the laundry, cleaned the urinals, cleaned the toilets, put the spread out, picked up their sweaty underwear, okay? You got that. So if you're too big to do that, all right, then you're not going to last. So until last August, I'm the athletic director and head baseball coach at a Division II institution in the Twin Cities, a capital city. And you know what I'm doing 10 Sundays a week? I'm going up picking up millionaires' sweaty clothes from the football locker room. And if you're too big to do that, or carry their bags, or take the trash out, whatever the job is, John's right on. I want to be the best visiting clubhouse guy in the business. Whether I am or not, I'm going to be the best I can be. And I want to be the best block player. And I want to be the best laborer. And it doesn't mean I am the best, but all I can do is I'm not going to be too big. I don't get the car and the cell phone to start with. You start out as a grunt, and if you don't want to be a grunt, then it's not going to work out too good for you. I'll just tell you that right now.
Love it. Love it. Rick, you got to follow these guys. And, you built the perennial big time conference program there, man. Big time. I know it just didn't happen overnight.
Well, Lunch and John hit a lot of the points right on the head. And John, especially, with just do the work and do the best you can at everything you do. I was a high school coach. I coached 3 years of high school, and my first full-time job was at a school in southern Missouri, Bakersfield High School, about 10 miles from the Arkansas border. I sent out 100 resumes, was still trying to get signed pro ball, had a wife and kid, and my first interview was Bakersfield. Didn't get signed by anyone, so that's where I went. Had an opportunity to come back to Upper Iowa the next year. I was the youngest. When they hired me, I was 23. I turned 24 shortly after that. Was the youngest head college coach in the country. And it wasn't because I was anything special. It was because I think I might have been the only one that wanted the job. We took over a program that was, 4-33 and maybe the worst field in the state. And I had to be the residence hall director, and I had to take a $10,000 pay cut to do it. And, a lot of people in my court told me I was crazy, but it was the best decision I ever made. Went to work for a great guy. There's the relationship part, Mike McCready, who told me that if I did a good job, that he would take care of me. And he did that. After 2 years, I couldn't do the residence hall anymore. I told them that if they didn't find something else for me to do, I had to go back to high school. And so I played football in college as well. And I became a football coach. So I was head baseball, assistant football for 10 years at Upper Iowa. I had to recruit for both sports for $25,000 or less for a lot of years. So to their point, you have to put in the time and you have to do the work. And I always told our guys, wherever you're at is the best place in the world. And it used to drive me nuts, even at, Upper Iowa or Northern Iowa. You'd see guys wearing other schools' shirts than, colleges, bigger colleges. And, I wouldn't allow that in our program from day one. If I was at Upper Iowa was the best place in the world. And that's how I've always treated every job that I've had. And then to shift gears just a little bit, to take it more into a program building type situation, my values and how I feel like things should be and how we should play the game and how guys should act off the field and in the classroom have never really changed since the 80s. I've tried to have a growth mindset, though, and that was the one advice I got from one of my mentors, Rick Matthews, from Centerville. Now with the Rockies, been with the Rockies forever, but did a lot of really cool things and a good friend. But Rick told me never quit learning, and that's the kind of emphasis we have in our program. It's not really about results. We set our goals, but it's about getting better every day, every single day. If you come to one of our practices, you're going to hear me talk about that more than anything else. Classroom, weight room, community, your residence hall, being the best person that you can be in all, in all phases of your life. If we do things right, we work, we put a lot of pride in trying to be the best player development crew in the country. Is our motto, whether we are or not. I think we do a pretty good job of it, both baseball and off the field. If you do all those things right on a daily basis, that the results will take care of themselves. And that's the attitude and the culture that I tried to build in our programs year after year. And now I'm 35 years of doing this. you still have to keep learning. You have to stay on the cutting edge, and probably more now than ever, with all the technology that's out there and all the things that are going on with our game. You just have to keep going. You have to keep pushing, and you're going to push your players to get better. Then as a coach, it's my job in the off season and during the season, whatever it might be, to be reading, learning, talking, trying to be the best, watching videos, whatever it is, to be the best coach I can be for those kids. That's how we go about our business.
Great way. I love the way you said that. And John, Rick brought up the technology. Not only technology, but also we're being overwhelmed with information on Twitter, Facebook, Zooms. There's so much great information out there. To try to decipher through all this information, to make changes. I know we're not going to solve this in one day, but how do you deal with all that?
Very carefully. Very carefully. I can tell you, I'm old enough to have seen the cycle.
There you go.
In almost every part of the game, there's a cycle, whether it's, no weights to a lot of weights to moderate weights to being an athlete. And it happens in every one of our parts of the game. It does. So I'm old enough to know that what is really popular now isn't going to be really popular 3 years from now. So first I have to be open to learn. Okay. And there's some cool metrics. Rapsodo does some things, Blast does some things. I'm liking spin rates pretty good right now. The bottom line is, how do you utilize it to develop the player? And I think most of those metrics can be utilized if you're trying to convince a player to make an adjustment. Okay. I don't know that a guy calling me about bat speed is enough. The guy who called, I had a guy try out several falls ago who apparently had the highest bat speed of anyone I've ever seen in my life. Well, I think he was 0 for 30 that fall, because you got to hit the ball to have high bat speed. But anyway, so my point is, I think coaches have to pick and choose. And this is what I challenge my assistants to do. All right, all these metrics you want to jump all over, all right? For every minute you spend calculating and working on metrics, is that a worthwhile minute? Or is there something more important to the development and our ability to win games than that? And if the answer is yes, then I suggest we look at that. All right. So, there's a lot of good metrics. Like I said, from a pitching standpoint, for sure spin rate. I asked 20 people about spin rate at the ABCA and all over. And no one has told me how to improve spin rate. They can tell me what spin rate is, and
they can give you the numbers.
Their pitches. But if we can't come up with a drill that helps a guy go from a 2100 to a 2400, then what are we doing here? If you're just telling me the spin rate's for evaluation only, well, then let's leave that for the draft picks. I need to be able to utilize it and improve on it. And if I can't, then it's a metric that I don't want to use. But anyway, to answer your question or conclude, I've been very, very hesitant to jump full in. I think right now everyone wants to jump full in. People are buying Rapsodos. People are just hooking that shit up all over. And that's all right, good. But, a line drive is a line drive. And if you have power, then maybe we can elevate a little bit more. If you don't have power, maybe we need to reduce that elevation a bit. So I think those common things. And then finally, let me just say, when you go to like an ABCA and you sit and you listen to the best coaches, I had some time with Tim Corbin at the last ABCA. He spoke at the last ABCA. If I got to hear a great coach again talk about line drives and putting the ball in play helps me win, then isn't that what it's about? Mm-hmm. The greatest coach is telling me it's still about putting the ball in play, making it a tough out, and hitting line drives, hitting the barrel of the ball, right? So they're valuable metrics. They can be used properly. Each coach has to decide how they're going to utilize it. To date, I think it's more marketing than performance.
Lunch, when it comes to technology, I get the part what John was talking about. You can measure things that help me as a teacher also identify that I'm doing something right, or maybe I was going in the wrong direction. But how much has it helped the actual game when it comes to wins and losses, when it comes to higher batting averages, more strikeouts, less walks? I guess, is it helped in that area?
Well, I think the problem, one of the problems with it is that now all of a sudden we're trying to teach everybody to hit the same way. I mean, the spin rate makes sense to me. If we've got a kid that has high spin rate, and you can look and go, okay, he's better to pitch up in the zone because he's got high spin rate.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that piece of it makes a lot of sense to me. But to try to teach just what coach is saying, we're still hitting line drives, okay? And I was criticized because I'm old. But I mean, we'll take the kid, come in the cage and try to hit 10 ground balls up the middle off the back screen. Now, until you can come off a tee and hit 10 ground balls 70 feet up the middle, there's no sense in me trying to go to the next level. It's like the kid in the car, and you're leaving Minnesota and you're trying to go to Denver, and he gets to Iowa, and are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? No, we got to go through Mason City. Then we got to go down through Kearney. And no, I'll give you an example. We're asking some of these kids to do things they can't possibly do. They're not good enough, okay? I had the pleasure of coaching Fran Lindor in 2009. I still stay in contact with him. He's a great asset. I go down and watch him hit, and he helps me, and he talks to me. And he was telling me when they came in this year, because I was asking him, what are you teaching? No, line drives. I hit line drives. He says, I'm going to hit line drives. He said, the reason I said, how are you hitting all these home runs? He said, I hit the ball out further out front now. I used to let the ball get way deep, but now I try to hit the ball just out front. He said, vertically, I'm challenged. So he's saying he hits everything horizontally, he's telling me. So here's the metrics. And I'm going, I had to figure out what's vertical and what's horizontal, right? So he said, but vertically, I struggled. So 12-6 was killing him. And he was frustrated, and he was working on it. And Trevor Bauer told him, when you get against a Verlander or somebody like that with a 12-6, and you recognize the pitch, which a lot of my guys aren't recognizing that pitch like he's going to, okay? So I can't teach him to swing like him. He said, try to hit 2 balls below it. And he said, you want me to swing 2 balls below? You want me to swing and miss on purpose? He said, yeah. He said, I wouldn't do it. He said, finally, I went 0 for 4, 0 for 5 against these guys. So I tried to hit 2 balls below it, and I fouled the ball off. He said, so I started working on it. And the next time I faced one of these guys, I think it was Cole, he said, he hit the ball off the clock in center field. Okay. And he went, dang, Bauer. Okay. So now just think of what I just told you. So should I be taking one of my Division II athletes and trying to get them to do that? No, they can't even recognize the pitch. And we're trying to get them to hit like Fran or Josh Donaldson. It's insane. It's insane. Now, if you got a kid that can do it, it's one thing, but you got to start in the beginning. And I got to get to Iowa before I can get to Nebraska, before I can get to Colorado. And that's the one thing. It's just kind of a gimmicky thing, and the kids are so caught up in the numbers. I love the Rapsodo, but I can't stand it when the kid throws a Rapsodo in a live pitching session and he turns around to see what his velo is. Yeah. Throw the ball over the plate. The velo will come. It's a process. So, I mean, I think there's really good to it. I think it's really bad. And I think there's a lot of gimmicks, but I think there's a lot of really good tools. And if it's good enough for the big leagues, it's good enough for me, you know? And so, I mean, but obviously they have resources that we don't have. So.
And speaking about the big leagues, Rick, the thing I see with younger kids, at least, the technology, they love that technology. So in some ways, coaches need to change a little bit and utilize it because it can be fun. It can help a little bit, keep them interested more. And I'm with Lunch too, man. We got to stay with the basics too. But with the pro teams, they love all the technology stuff from colleges because they can see everything right, black and white on paper. Talk about that and what you think about technology.
Well, I mean, we've been one of the programs that have been kind of out front with the technology, and I've been blessed to have assistants that are way smarter than I am, and that's important. I've had Pete Lawrenson, who's now at the Indians, and Joe Migliaccio, who's with the Yankees, Desi Druschel, who the Yankees took from me as well, and is one of their top pitching guys in the organization, and so on and so forth. I mean, we've had so many. Sean Moore and Jake Yasinich, and we just had so many guys who are really, really smart. And now we have Dr. Robin Lund on our staff, who is an exercise scientist, who's been a partner of mine since the early 2000s, and was able to get him on board after Coach Drosho left and went to the Yankees. All those guys are super, super smart, but they also do tons and tons of research. And to John's point, just having it isn't the key. You have to be able to utilize it. And to John's point, I tell our guys, no matter what we know and no matter what you want to do, at the end of the day, I mean, if it's not helping us win games, throw strikes, hit line drives, field the ball, then we can't do it. We need to figure out what we can do to really help our players get better. And that's the thing about the tech that I like, is that we've experimented and we've got a lot of managers. We can't have the coaches, so we've gone the other way, and we've got some brilliant kids. I saw George Horton when we played in the regionals against Oregon. He had so many managers. I'm like, how in the heck is he doing it? and I'm like, that's so smart. And so we got so many smart kids here at the University of Iowa. And we just put it out there. Anybody who wants to help us out. And now we've got an elaborate program where guys are in charge of the tech side, the data side, the video side, the field side. And we have 22 managers who can do a lot of the research and the work to take it off of our plates. We can see if the data is really helping us or not helping us. But for me, it's just being able to help the players self-organize, especially with like the hit tracks and some of those things. They get instant feedback, and you're not tinkering near as much. And to me, teaching hitting is a lot simpler with the tech that we have, because the kids are figuring it out on their own. They get the feedback right away if they're hitting balls at 50 degrees or they're hitting balls at 20 degrees. They can see that instantaneously, and you can compete to get them to do what you think is best for them, and that's hit the ball between 10 and 20 degrees all the time, and you're going to hit 700, and that's what we're trying to do, is barrel the ball up as best we can. And then on the pitching side, there's some really cool stuff out there. And, with the spin rates, just so you know, John, my guys are trying to invent something right now. We've been at it for a year to increase spin rate.
Yeah.
And outside of pine tar.
But don't you think the only real way is we have a slow motion camera? So you gotta sync up the slow motion camera with a pitch rate, and you watch them, and you get a high pitch rate, and you look and say, okay, what were you doing there? Isn't that? That's about where I'm at.
Well, what they're trying to do is develop some sort of training device, some sort of contraption that you can, like weightlifting, or anything else, you can do reps with it to hopefully improve your ability to put more spin on the ball naturally without the use of a foreign substance. And we may not get it, but we're trying to figure that out right now, because as you said, John, nobody knows, and they would tell you right now that you can't really do it with a foreign substance.
Oh.
But and then to Lunch's point, being able to help your guys tunnel their pitches and pitch the way they should, because we've all been guilty in our career of trying to get the guy to pitch down in the zone. When we look back now, going, holy cow, that kid should have been throwing up in the zone, and he would have been getting more strikeouts, guys to chase, as opposed to pitching at the knees. Not everybody's the same cookie cutter, but knowing the information, I think that our pitching has really, really improved from a pitch calling standpoint with that data and with that information for each pitcher, and every pitch really makes sense now with the tech and the data that's out there. So there's a lot of really cool things that we utilize and really enjoy, that does help the players improve and get better.
And one of the things I was thinking about was everybody online, after they heard John say that, they're all out there after this show. They're all going to try to figure out how to increase spin rate. They're going to come up with all kinds of stuff. So here goes the science. Let's go get them, guys. Hey, Bode, listen, one of the things I think it's important, and it's a question that comes up here online, what's the most undertaught part of the game, and that you'd love to see coaches focus more, whether it be the high school or the younger levels, and why?
Whoa. That's a big question. I'm going to just jump at saying the fundamentals. I mean, I think the most important thing is that we teach our players the things that are going to help us compete and win. Okay. So, and you need to do that in a way that matches the frequency in the game, right? So if you lose every game on a first and third double steal, then you probably should spend a lot of time on first and thirds. But we all know that doesn't happen a lot. So how do you win? Most importantly, you win because you play catch better than the other team. I'd say that's the starting point for most levels. So commit yourself to being the best play catch team, in America. I think playing catch is the key. Okay, and then every aspect of the game has those fundamentals, right? Can we have an efficient swing, but can we understand mentally how we're going to hit in certain counts? Do we know how to run the bases? Fundamentally, we don't have to do a jump lead or anything crazy, but do we understand the fundamentals of the game? So to answer your question, I could go on for hours. There are still fundamentals of this game. And if we simply teach those as a starting point, I think you're putting your team ahead.
Lunch, are we losing, and this is just me, but are we losing the ability of young kids being able to compete? And I love the fundamental part because I'm big on fundamentals. But are you getting guys that are tough enough to compete? Now, I say that because I've been all over the world like you guys. And I've been to some countries, man, they're tough as nails mentally, and you don't have to teach them how to compete because they know how to compete. Their lifestyle brought them up that way. But I'm seeing some players sometimes that, and I'm not blaming showcases or anything like that, but they seem to be more showcase players than they do how do you compete in a ball game?
Well, I think you get into a lot of the issue is the tools. Okay, you see guys with great tools, but then these showcases, they don't keep score in a lot of them, and so the guys don't know how to play the game. They don't. The guy's got a great arm. He threw the ball to the wrong base. So simple things like that. I don't have a great answer for that. I mean, tools are one thing, but understanding the game of baseball is another. And we always say, I don't want a guy that's playing baseball. I want a baseball player. I think you can teach if you can make it make sense to some kids that aren't extremely competitive. I think you can help them. But I've had scouts. We've talked to scouts, and it's been, this kid's a hothead, and the scout will say, yeah, well, it's a lot easier to take something out of this kid than it is to put it in a kid. And he's probably right in that regard. I mean, our first experience with USA was Cuba. Cuba beat us up bad.
Great point.
They beat us bad. We ended up finishing 5th. That was fun. We got flowers and they got medals. But I sat that night with the Cuban coach and had a beer with him, and through an interpreter, I asked him, I said, tell me about us. I want to know about Americans. He said, you're easily distracted.
Yeah.
He said, it's hot here. We use the language barrier. We use the heat. They give our first baseman a little flipper on the way down. They did all sorts of different things. They slowed the game down. They broke their shoelaces and pretended they couldn't afford it. You're sweating out there, and all our guys are doing is they're worried about that stuff. And he said, Americans are easily distracted. So what we did the next year, I talked to Crates and Saunders about that. I said, we've got to teach this, because he told me, he said, who knows you're here? It's a 16U team. I said, what do you mean? Well, who knows you're here? I said, well, my family, yeah, your family, your friends, those people. Okay. If you win, nobody cares. You're a 16-year-old team. If you lose, nobody really cares. There's so much going on in your country. He said, if we win, I'm a national hero. If we lose, I go to the sugarcane field. So I come home and Craig Saunders, we're playing against desperate people here. We've got to match their intensity here on the field. And so, I mean, I've told that story 16 million times. We're going to go play Mankato State or Augustana. We better be matching their intensity because they might have physically better people than us. So I think it can be taught, but I think to a degree, some people are just born with it more so than others. But that can be part of recruiting too. I've seen a couple kids play up in Minnesota that if they went to a showcase, nobody would even look at them. And I can't think of their stinking names. AJ Pedersen. I think he was all Big Ten and playing for the Twins, and his brother. No, they didn't have a tool. They didn't have a tool, but those kids played so hard and understood the game so well that they were able to play at a higher level against guys that were just basically physically better than them. So I think some of it's in there. I think you can work on it, but it's, I mean, a big piece. I don't know what you got to do at your level, guys. I mean,
well, and that's what I was going to ask Rick, because, you know, he brought up a good point. I was going to ask you the intensity level. How do you bring that intensity level up to be at the level of other teams that you're trying to compete against? And I'll give you an example. The Cubans, as Lunch said, I've been in a clubhouse so many times. The Cuban clubhouse is as loose as anything. You know, yet you go to the USA clubhouse and it's quiet and it's, you know, everybody's concentrating. They're just two different styles, but it works for the Cubans, but it also works for us in the U.S. because the U.S. is doing a pretty good job too.
Well, I mean, I think it's a situation that it can be taught. It can be taught, like Lunch was saying, but it's going to take a long time, and it has to be in a program, and that's where it's tough sometimes for maybe a summer coach, because he only gets the guys at game time. He maybe doesn't have the opportunity to practice with them. And it goes back to what John said, is teaching fundamentals, because a baseball player that hasn't been taught the fundamentals has a hard time competing at baseball, other than just trying to show what he can do. But, you know, in my experience, you know, coming from places where at Upper Iowa, we had to tee it up against guys who had, especially early on there, that had more talent than us. It's just basically teach the guys to play the game right, play it every day, look at the scoreboard at the end of the day, play as hard as you can. And that's going to give you a chance to come back. I had a chance to work with Jeff Clement here, you know, major leaguer, you know, one of the best players, Iowa home run or national home run record holder in high school. And Jeff would always just say, keep playing the game and the game will come back to you. But you have to have time to teach that, and it has to be consistent. It can't be a rah-rah speech before you play Wichita State. When I was at UNI and we had 7 in-state scholarships, and we're trying to beat Wichita State, Creighton, Missouri State, all the teams in the Missouri Valley that are fully funded. You know, nobody really cares your problems. You have to find a way to match their intensity and their focus. And I'm a realist with our guys as well. It's like, okay, here's the deal. If we don't play perfect today, if we don't play our best game, if we don't come out and play harder than these guys, you know, we don't have a chance. But if they don't show up, we're going to beat them. If they show up, we're probably going to lose today, regardless of what we do. But that's our only chance. And just basically getting your guys into the mindset to control what they can control, and that is their effort, their intensity, their attitude, how they go about their business. And that's what we try to instill in our guys from day one. And consequently, if you look back at the time here at Iowa, I mean, we've had a bunch of comebacks in the last 3 innings of games because our guys have bought into that and keep playing. They just keep playing. But you have to have time to instill that into the players, especially if they don't have it naturally. We've even in the past 5 years had our guys take personality tests, and the reason for that is I had hopes of coaching each guy better, if that makes any sense, to have a note card. When I'm talking to Pete, this is what makes Pete tick. When I'm talking to John, this is what makes John tick. And just have basically a cheat sheet for every single one of those guys and all the staff to or at least memorize them, whatever, that we know that this kid maybe isn't the most competitive kid, but he has high ethics. He has high concern for his teammates, and he can overcome that lack of competitiveness that he has with other attributes in his personality test that we know are strong points. And so we've tried to get to the bottom. I mean, we're not a team. I mean, we get it. It's a little different than it was when I was at UNI and Upper Iowa. We get a lot of first picks at recess now, but we're not getting all the first picks. And what kind of led me to this is getting along is the women's soccer coach at North Carolina knows that his personality trait is if they're not ultra competitive, he has a hard time coaching them in the short version. So all of his kids basically take these tests. So he knows when he picks a kid that he wants to play for his team, they're going to be a fit from a competitive standpoint with him. Most of us don't have that opportunity. And not all kids are ultra competitive, but that doesn't mean that they can't compete or they aren't motivated in other areas. So long-winded answer, but I think it can definitely be taught. You need time, you need to have a plan for it, and it needs to be consistent on an everyday basis. It's not something that's going to happen, right before the game when you're playing that team.
Yeah, and key point, you need to be consistent. Get constantly working on it. Excellent. Well said. Hey, guys, we got about 7 minutes. And, John, I'm going to ask you this, and then, you can answer also the other question too. But I'm curious out of all three of you guys, throughout the years, your managing style, your coaching style, what's changed with players coming up in the last 3-4 years? People keep saying, players change, the game changes. I don't know what the answer is, but what's changed in your coaching style, John?
Well, I think in general, the realization that most student athletes perform best somewhere between sheer chaos and sheer comfort, right? I mean, and every individual is a little bit different, okay? So understanding that, a practice that's just easygoing isn't always getting the most out of them, but being a tyrant doesn't also always work. And I think early in my career, I wanted to be the yeller, and I was the yeller. I was pretty good at it, quite frankly. And every time I did that, it wasn't really me. I didn't want to be angry at that time, but it was my competitiveness that forced me to try to get more out of them by challenging them in that way. Where am I now? I want to be myself. And I want players to respect that if they don't go about their business in a certain way, we may get to that point, but I feel like there's better ways of motivating them on a daily basis. I don't have to be the screamer. I don't have to be the yeller. And going hand in hand with that is what I've realized is I think players are harder on themselves than they ever were, ever. I think they want to do well, and they're kicking their own self in the butt more times than I am. And so getting to what I've seen is I think their resiliency and their ability to get over failure is as tough now as it had ever been. So what have I changed? I've tried to be myself, which isn't always angry. I've tried to find ways to communicate with them in a way that fosters their learning. And then finally, I do know that one of the challenges that we have ahead of us is their ability to get over failure. And that's the game, right? That's absolutely the game. So that's something that we have to do a better job as coaches to help them get over their failures so that we can move on. I mean, the whole criticism thing where you just tell them what they're doing wrong, that works for about like 3 seconds. And then they shut your ass off. All right. So that wasn't always like that. 20 years ago, they're like, oh, okay, coach yelled at me. Yeah, I couldn't believe he yelled at me like that. And God, I better step my game up. That's not where we are now. So ultimately, though, at the end of the day, you have to be who you are. If you're Bobby Knight, then be Bobby Knight. If you're not Bobby Knight, then don't be that way just to try to motivate your players.
Well said. And I remember when I was a kid, if I went to my dad and said, hey, Dad, coach yelled at me, he'd say, suck it up and get back on the field. Times have changed, no doubt. Lunch. Now, you look like one of those tough guys, but we know you're not as tough as you look.
I'm not a yeller.
No.
I'm a talker, like John said. Talk too much probably, but I mean, one of the things we try to stress at all levels, working at 8-year-old camp, is they need to understand the nature of the game. The nature of the game is you're going to go out. The nature of the game is you're going to fail. Do you understand that? Yes. Okay. If 27 guys don't go out in the game doesn't count. Okay. Now, if you like going out, you're an idiot. But you have to understand that this isn't about you. This is about us. You give it your best effort. And if you go out, go back to the dugout, get your glove, and pay attention to the game and what's going on. I'd like to get rid of my bad. I can't stand my bad. Butch Chapin will say, my bad will get you beat. A ground ball to third, I pick it up, throw it out on the street, and I go, my bad. Well, no kidding. Who else's bad could it be? You threw the damn ball out on the street. What do you want me to come out and give you a hug? I mean, I just think, and that's kind of the victim thing to get people to recognize, no, I know I made a mistake, so don't anybody yell. You know, it's, I don't have a good word for it, so I'll just stop there. But understanding the nature of the game and pounding that in on them, and I think this even goes back to recruiting. What you're talking about is this is when you can call the high school coach and tell me about this kid. Oh man, this kid competes. This kid competes. Now, like John said, he's got to be able to play. But I wouldn't be calling if he couldn't play. But the bottom line is that's the side of it too. You know what? He's a really good player. He's a little soft. That's great information. That doesn't mean we're not going to recruit him, but that's good information to know up front, because then you're better prepared to help this kid and maybe even discuss that on his recruiting visit, these types of things. So, I mean, I just think that, it's a game of failure. It's an overused term, but they really need to understand that it's not about you. I need you to toughen up. Okay. Shut up and play. And let's go to work, deal with what comes your way and be ready on the next pitch. And
Rick, and add to that, but also which kind of matches up, because there's a question from Dennis says, how do you help your players deal with that failure? I know that's like 10 shows that we could do on that, but kind of add to that a little bit, maybe add the failure aspect.
Well, again, it starts with you as the head coach, and not talking about results. I heard somebody say that if I'm a process-driven coach and I slip up and I say we really need to win this game one time in a month, it takes me 400 more process-driven comments to get the guys to believe that I really believe that. And so it's really trying to pay attention to how you talk to the team and, you know, your quality at bat chart. We just try to what I've tried to do and do better each year is reward the things in our program that I think is really important. If it's important in your program, find ways to reward it. Hustle in the first base, quality at bat, whatever you think is important. If you can focus on that, that helps guys deal with failure when they're 0 for 3, but yet you can find something positive in the 0 for 3. And I don't have to deal with the parents as much as the high school guys do. But even with our parents, I a couple times send out letters just saying, listen, this is how we do things. It's a process-driven program. We're focusing on quality at bats. We're focusing on, you know, stuff on the pitch, on the mound. You guys got to buy in, because when they take their kid out to supper that night and he's 0 for 3, but he had, in my opinion, 2 productive at bats, he helped us win the game. I don't need the parent wearing him out that he was 0 for 3, because they're going to listen. They're going to listen to them. So we even take it to that extent to try to help get the parents to understand what we're trying to do, so they're hearing the proper feedback at home, so kids can deal with failure and just go out and play. You know, and then next pitch mentality and teaching the mental game, whatever you believe in from a mental game standpoint, it has to be part of the everyday process. It can't be, again, 2 or 3 speeches in the first semester and 2 or 3 speeches in the second semester. So we basically have a write-up of the mental game on everything we do, and teach. We teach routines is what we do. That's it. We just give guys routines. If this happens, this is what we'd like you to do. And then,
Rick, on that, just so on that, so I want the coaches to understand it. This happens in practice also. We're not talking about just games.
No, I'm talking, every day.
Yeah.
I mean, we're working on our routines every single day. I mean, if we're doing, we're doing our at-bat routine, they're doing it at least in several of their cage sessions as well. You can't just say, okay, do it in a game and a live at-bat. We don't get to practice that very often. And so we have to practice it during the course of our normal practice. And it's talked about every single day, probably more than anything else. Because it's really important. It might be the most important thing, is that they're confident and they believe in themselves. And you asked how we've changed. I think that's one thing I've tried to get better at, and I'm more, I would say, more calm in the dugout when the game starts. We coach in practice. I'm not a yell and scream guy either. I'm a matter of fact, but I'm not going to look the other way after day 4 either. I'm going to always hold you accountable. And I think that's a big part of it too. A lot of the kids I get in our program, I work with the infielders. You know, they're used to somebody looking the other way after the second time they talk to them.
Good point.
And I'm not that guy. And I tell them that in the recruiting process. You know, you're going to get coached every day. If you don't like that or don't want to be a part of a program like that, then this is not the place to come, because you are going to get coached every day. But anyway, letting the players play the game at game time, being prepared, all those things, but being a really calming voice in the dugout and asking the right questions as opposed to yelling and getting on guys.
Excellent. And the guys, just so you know, last question, and we will close it off. Here's what the question is from South Africa, and it's a recruiting question, but you can answer that and then give a final statement of any advice you want to give to coaches out there that are on the show. And we'll start with John. And the question is this: our good friend from South Africa, Gavin Bennett, asked, because, and I know it's not an easy one to answer when it comes to what's out there, because in recruiting, you have services that you could use to recruit with, and yes, they do cost money. Some are free, some cost a little bit more. Then you obviously have the direct contact, and I know they fall under, which one do we use? Do we use both? Any advice there? I know this isn't an easy one. John?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think you use everyone, a combination of things. Coach Heller, Coach McKenzie, and myself do not just listen to high school coaches. We do not just go to games. We do not just look at video. I think there's a number of different ways. So I think there's relationships that have to happen, and I think they can do that. But as far as, this is why I don't love recruiting services. I don't think they do a good enough job of creating fit and matching up student athletes with programs. They send it out broadly to everyone. And if I was going to be your agent, I would at least expect that I would have a feel for how Coach Heller coaches. And before I send you to Coach Heller, I should know, what is he looking for in an athlete and how is he going to coach? And then I can look at the athlete and say, these two I need to put together. Most services mass email it out. They have no idea if it's going to be a good fit or a bad fit or any fit. So that's where I don't like them. To answer your question, do multiple things. You can email coaches directly yourself. You can create videos yourself. You can network with other coaches. That should help. You can go to showcases. Why wouldn't you? Mm-hmm. So that's the answer to that. And then as far as summing this thing up, Pete, first of all, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to just tell you a little bit about what I wrote down today. First and foremost, Coach Heller talked about having a growth mindset, and that's really important. And that's why I have 2 pages of notes. And it reminds me of what Charlie Green told me. He says, I don't know if I'm old school or new school, but I know I got to stay in school. So first and foremost, go to clinics, go to podcasts, talk to one another, go have a beer at a bar and talk baseball. That's what it needs to happen. Second of all, we've talked about fundamentals, but I think it's clear that one of our fundamentals is how to process things mentally. That's as important as playing catch. And when are you teaching it? Always. You're always teaching it. Every time you're in practice, you're teaching the mental side of the game. That's why I don't particularly love, I'm going to buy this for this mental coach and I'm going to listen to it. Well, if you don't own that material up here, then how do you coach it every day? It's not something you throw in on a VHS or a DVD or a podcast and say, hey guys, pay attention. Maybe it'll work. All right. You have to own it and you coach it every day. And then the final thing that Coach, I think both Lunch referred to this and Coach Heller, but as coaches, it's easy to look the other way. We told it to him 5 times and now he's not doing it, so I'm just going to ignore it. That's the worst thing you can do as a coach. Our job is to hold them accountable, and there's a big difference between nearly right and exactly right. So
fantastic.
Again, thanks.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Lunch, you're next, buddy.
This is great stuff. I mean, I appreciate you having the old retired guy on here, actually, now that I'm a lowly assistant. But, in talking about the mental side of it again and dealing with the failure and stuff, the other thing that we try to let our kids know is if I'm hitting, I'm competing against that guy. And if I'm pitching, I'm competing against that guy, depending on the situation. And I'm going to tell you something. If he strikes me out, did I do something wrong or did he do something right? If I hit a home run, did I do something? I'm not giving him credit for my home run. Okay, so it's just a constant competition out there against the game itself, against that guy, and against the other team. Okay, and you're going to fail. But sometimes the other guy did something right. Tip your hat, and go, shut up, and go get your glove. I'll give you one. Tom Kelly told Paul Blanchard and I. We went down. Blanche wanted to meet TK, and we went down, and Shane Mack was on third base. I think it was against the LaRusse's A's, and they played the infield back. And every come set, the infield crept in. TK says, yeah. He said, well, he did it 5 pitches in a row. He said, yeah. He said, well, isn't he going to figure it out? TK said, no. He said, Shane's a great player, great human being, but he has very little baseball instincts. And LaRusse is smart enough to know that. He's smart enough to know that. So, I wanted to get in a conversation. So I said, so what do? He said, you just keep telling him. Because when you quit telling them, you quit doing your job. When you quit doing your job, they're going to quit doing their job. And just remember this, McKenzie, your people don't get paid $4 million to play the game. So don't be too hard on them. Made sense. You got millionaire ball players out there. Some people are very instinctive. Some people are not instinctive. You have to understand your person. But as a coach, and if I got to tell them so many times, I'll probably put somebody else out there unless I have nobody else. But I think his message is good. You got to keep coaching. You got to keep coaching. And sometimes it's really, it's hard and repetitious, but great to see Rick and John. And John, I don't know if you know this. I know you brought up Bobby Knight, but if we turn these screen blank, you sound exactly like Mike Krzyzewski. I had him in 2 Final Fours up here. I'm telling you, you sound exactly like Coach K. And you got a royal blue hat on.
But better looking. But better looking.
I'm not going there.
He still looks like he's a player, and look at the experience he has. Unbelievable. The youth is awesome. Looking young. Rick, close it off for us, and then I'll just do a real fast closing for the podcast. Go ahead.
Okay, I can't answer the question you asked any better than John did. That was a perfect answer to that, and both Lunch and John's summaries were outstanding. Trying to think of something to say to close it out, I guess.
Yeah, last minute advice to coaches.
Well, no, I just go back to the fact that when I first started in college, I realized I was in over my skis, because of the age, coaching players the same age, I had a lot of obstacles, and what I wanted to do was develop my own beliefs and my own philosophies a little bit to what John said. I went out and listened. This is particularly for the young guys, but also good reminder for the older guys on the call is that, what I did was I talked to as many people as I possibly could, listened. And at the time I was still playing, I wouldn't teach anything to our kids that I wouldn't try out myself in the summer leagues. I'd never caught, I'd always played shortstop. I would catch 5 games every year just so I knew what the catcher was going through. So I had perspective to what a catcher actually goes through, because I was a lone coach at the time. I ended up getting 1 assistant, but I had never coached catchers before, and I needed to be able to do that. But I went out and I developed my own beliefs, my own philosophies, and then from there it's just been small tweaks and try to improve on those philosophies as I've gotten older. I see a lot of guys that'll just boom, completely change 180 the next year. They're back another 180 the next year. They don't really stand or believe in anything. It's a hodgepodge of what they're going out and trying to change when they hear all this stuff. When you finally get to a point where you feel strongly about your own beliefs and how you believe you should teach the game, every part of the game, there's tons of information out there. Now you've got a way to implement that into your program, as opposed to just throwing everything away and going 180 the other way, which I see guys doing a lot, especially today with all that's out there.
Great advice. Hey, listen, I thought this show was going to be a great show. I didn't know it was going to be awesome. You guys are fantastic. These could be one-on-one shows, and they'd be blockbusters. Can't thank you enough, guys. John, first of all, with you, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Hey, anytime.
All right, Lunch, stay safe. Thank you again, man. You're great.
God bless you, brother.
All right, and Rick, also, thank you. Can't thank you enough, buddy.
No, thanks, Pete, and thanks everybody on the call. And John and Lunch, it was awesome. Thanks.
All right, that's John Vodenlich. John Vodenlich, Lunch McKenzie, and Rick Heller. I'm Pete Caliendo. Thanks to the Lineup Media Group and Brian Crock, our producer. Thank you to everybody on Facebook, Twitter, and Zoom. This is a show which loves to interview baseball's best coaching minds, and you just heard three of the best in the business and great, great, great people, just great human beings. Thanks for being on. I'm your host, Pete Caliendo. We'll see you. We'll be off for about 5 days, taking a break from all this Zoom and coming back in a week. So everybody stay safe. God bless you. And hopefully you're on the field very soon if you're not already. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, man.
You could stay on if you like. I just wanted to shut off